Next up, we'll invite Susan Grettenberger, representing the National Association of Social Workers, Michigan chapter, wishing to speak in opposition to the bill. Good morning.
Good morning. Hit the red button, please. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on this issue. I appreciate it. My name is Susan Grettenberger, and I'm speaking in opposition to House Bill 5958, commonly referred to as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I am a licensed social worker, a professor and the director of social work at Central Michigan University, and the vice president of social policy for the National Association of Social Workers, the Michigan chapter. And today I'm speaking on behalf of the NASW, the Michigan chapter. House Bill 5859 violates social work professional requirements and has the potential to harm many people, including clients who rely on the services of unbiased and objective social workers. It would allow social workers to legally refuse service to people based on the social worker's religious beliefs, regardless of the immediacy or the intensity of the crisis of the person that's seeking services. Now, the profession of social work holds to a code of ethics, which states that we, as a profession serving the needs of vulnerable, at-risk, and marginalized populations, will respect and support the ability of people to have self-determination. This includes access to needed services. Explicitly, the Code of Ethics prohibits social workers from practicing, condoning, facilitating, or collaborating with any form of discrimination on the basis of many characteristics such as race, ethnicity, national origin, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, marital status, political belief, religion, immigration status, and mental or physical disability. Further, all social workers are directed to act to prevent discrimination against any person based on these same characteristics. So basically, social workers are duty-bound to not discriminate in their practice and to actively work to prevent discrimination. This proposal, this act, would suggest that social workers have the right to violate the profession's ethical obligations, which are the values that are agreed upon by the profession nationally. Michigan's licensure law, similar to social work licensure laws in other states, requires adherence to a standard of inclusion and of cultural competency. These standards are linked to our Code of Ethics. Therefore, refusal to provide service to specific clients would put social workers at risk of violating our profession's licensure and our expectations generally as a profession. So, while on its face, HB 5958 allows individuals to act on their beliefs, in practice, it really would create a great harm potentially to society, as social workers are the providers of many public services in the areas of child welfare, mental health, public safety, corrections, substance abuse, domestic violence, and more. For instance, social workers opposed to war on religious grounds could refuse to serve military families. Child welfare workers, potentially whole agencies, could refuse to serve families or even foster children who identify as bisexual, gay, lesbian, or transgendered. Social workers whose religious beliefs exclude the use of alcohol could refuse a client in need of help with addiction. Now, these points, though extreme, illustrate that clients in need of services could be harmed by this act. The governor and the lieutenant governor have devoted considerable energy, time, and money through the Mental Health and Wellness Commission and its subsequent report to finding ways to increase access to mental health services. This bill would regress that by reducing access to service. Reducing services to vulnerable populations, such as those affected by mental health challenges, poses a human risk to the person who does not receive services, and it even potentially is a public health risk for people who are under threat of violence, of experiencing violence, of committing violence, or of self-harm due to mental illness. So this proposal troubles me as a social work educator as well. In accordance with the profession's mission to serve all vulnerable populations and to use its Code of Ethics, social work program accreditation standards require us to teach all students to serve all populations and to practice in a non-discriminatory way. HB 5958 contradicts those standards and would lead social work programs across the state at risk of losing accreditation. Local agencies could refuse to work with students who are LGBT. Social work agencies may receive interns who refuse to work with specific populations, jeopardizing the agency, threatening the university's social work program accreditation, and harming clients. One might argue in the case of one worker's refusal to service a client, the services could be provided by someone else. This is frequently not an option. Often program workers are overburdened and unable to absorb additional clients. Other workers at an agency may share the same religious values, particularly in an organization that's faith-based and hires within the faith. In Michigan's many rural areas, often there are very few, or even only one social worker for a given service. So the refusal to serve a client would functionally remove services, often publicly funded services, from those clients. From a professional standpoint, a code of ethics standpoint, a licensure standpoint, an educational and national accreditation standpoint, and from a human standpoint, NASW-Michigan opposes HB 5958. And I thank you for your time today. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and
to you from
joining
CMU.
us. I appreciate that. You had mentioned in some of the examples that you were giving potential situations, and that you mentioned they might be extreme examples. We heard earlier that approximately 27, maybe as many as 30 other states have RFRA-like protections, some in legislation, some case law. In those states, I'm assuming that there is some level of licensure required for social work.
Yeah.
Can you give any examples of where this has occurred in any of those 27 or 30 states?
You know, what's difficult about this is, I mean, my deeper concern, I mean, the purpose of these standards, among other things, is primarily to protect clients. And it's impossible for us to consider and to really know how clients have been harmed in these other states. The person who calls up for a service who's refused, who then goes and kills themselves, is not going to show up in any statistics. I mean, it's really difficult to document some of these harms, and that's a challenge that I think we need to know that this stuff happens, because if a client calls, and we know this in social work, if a client calls and is denied service, they frequently will not reach out again. A domestic violence survivor who is in a home, one time somebody says they won't serve somebody. A person who calls for help because they're thinking about killing themselves goes out and does it. We never hear from that person again. So we have a hard time documenting that.
And if a government actor were to take the position and not provide service, that would fail for violating the Establishment Clause.
I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and I don't know how that plays out in court. And I also don't know if there is such a violation, who would make that claim if somebody did not return and had... I mean, how would that be documented? I mean, it would be too late at that point, even if they violated the permission. I mean, do I know of instances personally where people have attempted to refuse service, where we've had to deal with this? Yes, I do. Do I know there have been harms to clients? Yes. I know that there are situations where people have been harmed. You know, I can't speak to other states, and I can't speak to the constitutionality or the litigation side of how someone would remediate for someone whose child, or, you know, somebody who was killed because of something that happened, some harm of that sort.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.